He died, saving an alien child. 50 years later, she rules as a queen before him. The planet Virilia was unlike anything Captain Elias Moore had ever seen. Its skies were a deep, shifting violet, streaked with orange lightning that danced across the clouds like living veins. The air was thin, but breathable with the help of his helmet's filtration system. Below, the jagged mountains and dark forests of Aurelia sprawled endlessly, hiding dangers that no human had faced before. Elias adjusted the straps of his suit and scanned the crash site ahead. A small Virilian transport ship had gone down hours earlier, and the last signal had been weak and chaotic. His mission was simple: rescue survivors and bring them back to his team waiting in orbit. But as he descended from his hovering shuttle, Elias felt a pang in his chest. He had a bad feeling about this. The crash site was worse than expected. Smoke curled from broken panels, and small fires burned here and there. The ground was littered with debris and strange alien flora, some of which hissed or moved as he passed. Elias's pulse quickened. He knew there could be survivors, but he also knew that time was running out. He stepped carefully among the wreckage. Every shadow could hide something deadly. Then he heard it, a faint whimper, high-pitched and fragile. Elias froze. The sound came from beneath a collapsed section of the ship. He moved quickly, lifting metal and debris piece by piece. Finally, he saw her, a tiny alien child, no more than 6 or 7 by human standards, with large, glimmering eyes that reflected the stormy skies. Her small body was trembling, and her skin had a faint, silvery glow. "Hey, it's okay," Elias said softly. His voice was calm, but his heart pounded. "I've got you. You're safe now." The child stared at him, fear and confusion in her eyes. She did not speak in any language he understood, but her trembling and the tears in her eyes told him enough. He lifted her carefully, cradling her in his arms. She felt lighter than he expected, almost delicate. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the wreckage. Elias looked up and saw movement in the shadows. Alien predators, drawn to the smell of the crash. They had sharp, glistening claws and jagged teeth, and they moved with terrifying speed. Elias tightened his grip on the child. "Hold on," he whispered. He drew his blaster and fired a series of controlled shots. The creatures screeched and retreated, but not for long. The storm above intensified, and Elias realized that the unstable terrain around him could collapse at any moment. He had 2 choices: leave the child behind to save himself, or risk everything to get her to safety. Without hesitation, Elias made his choice. He would not abandon her. Not like this. Carrying the child, he ran toward the shuttle, carefully avoiding burning debris and unstable ground. One of the creatures lunged from the shadows. Elias fired, but the beast's movement was too fast. It leaped, striking his shoulder and sending him tumbling. Pain seared through him, but he shielded the child with his body. The creature hissed and then retreated, leaving them both shaken. Elias forced himself to his feet. His vision blurred from the pain, but he kept moving. The shuttle was close now, just beyond the jagged rocks, but the storm was worsening. Lightning struck nearby, and a fissure opened in the ground beneath him. The child cried out, her arms clinging tightly around his neck. "Almost there," Elias said, gritting his teeth. He ignored the pain in his shoulder and legs, focusing only on the child. A sudden tremor threw him forward again, and this time he knew he could not continue. The ground beneath him split, creating a deep chasm. The wind howled, and the storm seemed to mock his efforts. Elias turned to the child. "You have to go on without me," he said, his voice steady but full of sorrow. "You're stronger than you think. You'll survive. Promise me you'll live." The child did not respond in words, but she nodded, her tiny hands gripping his helmet. Elias smiled faintly. It was all he could do to let her go. He pushed her toward a safer path he had seen moments earlier. She stumbled but caught herself, then ran toward the edge of the clearing. Elias took a deep breath and looked back at the chasm forming beneath him. He felt the creatures closing again, drawn by the movement, drawn by his presence. His time was up. He raised his blaster one last time, firing to keep them at bay, giving the child a chance to escape. She turned once, her eyes wide with fear and understanding, and then she ran, disappearing into the darkness, guided by the faint lights of his shuttle in the distance. Elias stayed behind. He did not regret his choice. In his final moments, he thought only of the child's survival, of the life he had saved. He thought of her eyes, glowing faintly even in the storm, and he smiled. The last thing he saw was lightning tearing across the sky, illuminating the alien landscape, and for a brief moment, he felt at peace. He had done what he came to do. He had saved a life. The storm consumed him, the ground shook, and the world of Aurelia claimed him, but the child lived. The shuttle's sensors later recorded the rescue from afar. The team in orbit saw the child emerge in the wreckage, alive and frightened, but unharmed. They could not recover Elias. The terrain was too dangerous, the storm too fierce. But they marked the location, hoping one day to honor the man who gave everything to save another. The child did not understand the full extent of what had happened. She only knew that a human had risked and lost his life for her. The memory of his face, kind and determined, stayed with her long after the fires cooled and the storm passed. In the years that followed, the survivors whispered stories of Elias Moore, the human who had braved death itself to save a Virelian child. For the child, now growing among her people, these stories became a seed of inspiration, a guide that shaped every choice she would make. She learned to walk carefully, to observe with sharp eyes, to act decisively, but always with compassion. Even as she grew stronger, she never forgot the man who had saved her. His courage became a quiet voice in her mind, a constant reminder that true strength lay not in power, but in selflessness. On nights when the storms of Aurelia raged, she would look toward the stars and remember him. She did not know his fate, only that he had given her a chance at life. And that chance was more than enough. Elias Moore was gone, but his legacy had just begun. The child would live, learn, and one day lead. And in her heart, she carried the memory of a human who had died, so that another life might continue, and that life would one day change the fate of a planet. The child who had once clung to Elias Moore in the storm of Aurelia was no longer small. 50 years had passed, and she had grown into a tall, graceful figure whose presence demanded respect. Her name, Lyra, was known across her planet, not merely as a queen, but as a symbol of hope, courage, and compassion. The palace where she ruled stood atop the cliffs of the capital city, its crystalline towers reflecting the violet and orange skies that had once terrified her as a child. Lyra would often stand on the balcony, gazing toward the stars, remembering a man she had never truly known, but whose actions had defined her life. Her rise had not been easy. The early years were filled with challenges. Many in the Virelian Council doubted the value of human teachings. They believed their species' ways were sufficient, that alien strength and cunning alone could maintain peace. But Lyra disagreed. She remembered Elias's selflessness, the courage it took for one life to risk everything for another. She believed that a leader should protect her people with the same determination. From a young age, Lyra had trained in both the arts of leadership and the sciences of Aurelia. She learned to command armies, to negotiate disputes, and to inspire loyalty without fear. She also immersed herself in human history, studying the stories Elias had left behind in Earth's records, carefully preserved by his team. She learned of human bravery, diplomacy, and ingenuity. Every lesson from humans became a tool, every story a guiding light. By the time she ascended the throne, Lyra was ready. The ceremony was simple by Virelian standards, but powerful. She did not wear the glittering jewels common to royalty. Instead, she wore a sash of silver threads, representing the memory of the life given to her so many years ago. Her first speech as queen was not a power or conquest. It was a responsibility. "My people," she said, her voice calm and steady. "We have survived storms, both within and without. We have faced trials that could have destroyed us. And yet we are here. We live because someone believed in life beyond themselves. Let us honor that belief and let it guide us forward." The council, initially skeptical, felt the sincerity in her words. Lyra's vision was not of domination, but of unity. Under her leadership, Virelia entered an era of innovation. Farms grew where only rocky soil had existed. Cities expanded thoughtfully instead of greedily, and the arts flourished alongside science. The citizens began to see the value of compassion and courage, the same human virtues that had saved Lyra's life. Yet Lyra never forgot her debt to Elias Moore. She commissioned the construction of a memorial in the capital city, a small but elegant monument dedicated to a man whose selfless act had changed the course of her life. The statue depicted a human man reaching out, protecting a small alien child. Citizens visited often, leaving flowers or candles. Stories of Elias were told alongside Virilian legends, and over time, humans became figures of admiration across the planet. Lyra's reign was not without threats. Neighboring planets occasionally tested Virilia's strength, and internal factions sometimes questioned her decisions. But she faced each challenge with calm intelligence. She did not rely on brute force alone. She studied her enemies, learned their tactics, and often resolved disputes before they became battles. Her rule was defined by the balance between strength and wisdom, a combination inspired by Elias's actions all those years ago. One evening, as she walked to the palace gardens, Lyra paused by a pool reflecting the twin moons of Aurelia. The water shimmered like glass, and in its reflection, she saw not just herself, but the memory of a small, trembling child. She knelt and traced the water's surface with her fingers, thinking of the storm, the lightning, and the man who had given his life for her. "You believed in me," she whispered, "and I will not waste this life. I promise." Her advisors approached quietly, not wanting to disturb her moment of reflection. "Your Majesty," one said, "we have received a message from the human colonies. They seek dialogue and perhaps alliance." Lyra's heart skipped. Humans, Elias's people, were returning to Virilia after 50 years. She felt a mixture of excitement and unease. The humans represented both her past and the unknown future. What would they think of a civilization shaped by the actions of one of their own? She rose and straightened her posture. "Prepare a welcome," she said. "We must show them the best of Aurelia, and perhaps the best of humanity as well." In the following weeks, Lyra worked tirelessly to prepare for the human delegation. She met with engineers, diplomats, and scholars, ensuring that every detail reflected both her people's culture and the virtues Elias had embodied. She even organized a special exhibition of Earth's history, including the story of Elias's mission and sacrifice. The humans would see not only her achievements, but also the enduring impact of one man's courage. When the humans finally arrived, Lyra waited on the balcony of the main palace. The ships descended with grace, their hulls reflecting the colors of Aurelia's sky. Among the humans was Dr. Marcus Hale, Elias's closest friend, who had carried records of Elias's missions and memories of his heroics. Lyra's heart raced as she considered meeting someone who had known the man who had shaped her entire life. The landing was met with cautious curiosity. Humans and Beryllians regarded each other, studying differences and similarities alike. Lyra stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. She greeted the delegation warmly, her voice steady, her gestures calm. "Welcome to Virilia," she said. "We honor your journey across the stars, and we look forward to learning from one another." Dr. Hale bowed slightly, his eyes widening in recognition. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "I have heard tales of your leadership, but I had not imagined it would be so remarkable." Lyra smiled faintly, her gaze turning inward for a moment. "I owe much to a human," she said quietly. "Without him, none of this would exist." Dr. Hale's expression shifted, curiosity and understanding mingling on his face. "Elias Moore," he whispered. "He saved you, did he not?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, he gave his life for me." Her voice held no bitterness, only respect and gratitude. "And in giving his life, he gave me a chance to lead, to learn, to shape my people into something greater." The humans and Virilians spent the following days exchanging knowledge and culture. Lyra guided discussions on governance, ethics, and science. The humans were impressed by the civilization she had built, technologically advanced, socially balanced, and morally grounded. It was clear that Elias's values had influenced not only her, but an entire world. Even at night, when the delegations had returned to their ships, Lyra would stand on her balcony and look at the stars. She thought of Elias Moore, imagining his calm smile, his courage, and the quiet strength that had carried her through the storm. She felt a deep connection, even across decades and light years. In the quiet of her private chambers, Lyra began to write a record of her own. Stories of Aurelia, of her people, and of a human who had inspired her life. She included lessons learned, reflections on leadership, and her hopes for the future. She intended these records to last for centuries, a permanent reminder of the bond between human and alien, past and future, courage and compassion. As the delegation prepared to depart, Dr. Hale approached Lyra once more. "Your Majesty," he said, "I must ask, did he ever speak of his hopes for the future? His dreams?" Lyra's gaze softened, her thoughts returning to that stormy day, to the small hands that had clutched his helmet. He hoped that someone would live, that life would continue, and that the universe would be better for it. "I intend to honor that hope every day of my reign." Dr. Hale nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. "He would be proud," he said. Lyra watched the human ships leave, their engines fading into the distance. She felt a mixture of relief and determination. The humans had returned, not just as visitors, but as witnesses to the legacy of one man's courage. She knew that the alliance they had begun could shape the galaxy for generations. As she turned back to her people, Lyra understood something fundamental. Leadership was not about power or conquest. It was about service, sacrifice, and the willingness to put others before oneself. Elias Moore had taught her this lesson, and she had carried it forward, guiding her world with wisdom and compassion. And though 50 years had passed since the storm, since the lightning, and since the life-saving act that had defined her existence, Lyra knew that the story of Elias Moore was far from over. It lived on in her people, and now, in the hearts of humans who would remember him once again. Virilia had changed, shaped by one act of selflessness. And the child who had survived that storm was now the queen who would ensure that the legacy of courage endured for all time. The twin moons of Virilia hung low in the sky, their silver light spilling over the capital city's crystalline towers. Queen Lyra stood on the balcony of her palace, watching the horizon. The human delegation was finally arriving, their ships cutting through the violet clouds with silent precision. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the weight of history. The humans were not mere travelers. They carried with them the stories, records, and memories of Elias Moore, the man who had given his life for her so many years ago. For Lyra, this was more than a visit. It was a reunion of legacies, the past meeting the present in the form of flesh and memory. The ships touched down in the central spaceport, and a hum of activity began. Virilian citizens, curious and respectful, lined the pathways, observing the humans with wide eyes. Many whispered about the legend of Elias Moore. Even after 50 years, the story of a single human who had risked everything for a Virilian child had become a tale told in homes, schools, and temples. It was a story of courage, compassion, and the enduring impact of selflessness. Lyra descended from her palace in a flowing cloak of silver and violet, symbolizing both her heritage and the enduring memory of Elias. Her advisors flanked her as she approached the landing site. Humans and Virilians regarded each other carefully, measuring gestures, expressions, and body language. The atmosphere was charged with curiosity and respect. A tall man with gray streaked hair and a calm demeanor stepped forward from the human delegation. He introduced himself as Dr. Marcus Hale, a historian, explorer, and Elias's closest friend. When his eyes met Lyra's, there was a silent understanding. He did not need words to recognize the link between her and Elias. "Your Majesty," Dr. Hale said, bowing slightly, "it is an honor to meet the one whose life was saved by my friend. You have carried his memory with great strength." Lyra inclined her head. "And you have preserved his legacy," she replied softly. "I have learned much from his life, even in his absence." Elias Moore was more than a hero. He was a guide. The two walked together toward a pavilion where Virilian and human scholars had gathered. Discussions began immediately, exchanges of science, culture, and philosophy. Humans marveled at the technological advances Virilia had achieved under Lyra's reign, while Virilians listened intently to account of Earth's own history and ingenuity. Dr. Hale spoke carefully, recounting Elias's final mission. He described the storm, the collapsing terrain, and the moment Elias had chosen to risk his life to save a small, trembling child. Lyra listened with calm attention, though her chest tightened with emotion. She had remembered every detail that day herself, yet hearing it from Elias's friend made it even more real. "He acted not out of duty," Dr. Hale continued, "but out of choice. He could have saved himself, but he chose to save another. That choice changed everything. For her, for Virelia, and for all of us who carry his memory. Lyra's gaze drifted to the sky, remembering the lightning, the storm, and the face of the man who had sacrificed everything. He would be proud, she whispered, to see what I have done with this life he gave me. The discussions expanded beyond history. Humans shared their knowledge of interstellar travel, medicine, and energy sources, while Virelians shared their innovations in environmental management, bioengineering, and cultural preservation. Lyra encouraged dialogue, ensuring that both species learned from one another. She wanted the humans to see that the planet Elias had saved was thriving, not because of luck, but because of the lessons he had left behind. At night, Lyra and Dr. Hale walked through the palace gardens, illuminated by soft, luminescent plants that pulsed gently in the dark. The air was fragrant with alien flowers, and the distant hum of the city reminded them both of life's persistence. "Your Majesty," Dr. Hale said quietly, "he would have loved to see this. Virelia, it is remarkable, and it is a reflection of his ideals. Courage, sacrifice, and compassion. They live here." Lyra smiled faintly. "I try to honor him every day," she replied. "Not just in memory, but in action. Leadership is not about power. It is about responsibility. He showed me what true courage looks like. I strive to follow it, even when it is difficult." Dr. Hale nodded. "It is rare for a single life to leave such a lasting impact. Elias's story is taught in my world, but seeing it reflected here, it is extraordinary." The next day, Lyra took the humans to the memorial she had built for Elias. It was a simple structure, yet elegant, a human figure kneeling protectively over a small alien child. The base of the statue bore the inscription, "For those who give everything so another may live." Citizens gathered around the monument, some laying flowers, others whispering thanks. The humans, too, were moved. Dr. Hale approached the statue and traced the figure's hand in quiet reverence. "He saved her life," he said softly, "and in doing so, he changed the course of this entire planet." Lyra placed her hand over his. "And in doing so, he changed the course of my life," she said. "I would not be queen without him. I would not have learned the lessons of selflessness and courage. He lives in every choice I make." As the delegation prepared to leave, Lyra gathered both humans and Virelians in the city square. She spoke of unity, of shared values, and of the power of selfless action. Her words were simple yet profound. A single act of courage can echo across generations. A single choice to protect life can shape the destiny of a planet. Elias Moore showed us this. Let us honor him not only in memory, but in our deeds every day. The humans and Virelians listened, heart stirred. Many felt a renewed sense of purpose. The alliance Lyra had envisioned was no longer just theoretical. It had begun, born from the courage of one man and nurtured by the wisdom of a queen. As the human ships departed, Lyra returned to her balcony. The stars shimmered above, each one a reminder of vast possibilities and the connections between worlds. She thought of Elias Moore, imagining his calm smile, his unwavering determination, and the quiet bravery that had carried her through the storm so long ago. For a moment, she felt a mixture of sorrow and gratitude. Sorrow for the life that had been lost, and gratitude for the life she had been given. She knew that his legacy was more than a story. It was a living truth, guiding her people and inspiring others across the stars. Lyra turned to her advisors. "Prepare the council," she said. "The humans may have left, but our work has just begun. We must continue the alliance, strengthen our knowledge, and ensure that the values Elias showed us guide both our worlds." Her advisors nodded, understanding that Lyra's vision extended far beyond politics. It was a philosophy, a way of life that emphasized courage, compassion, and selflessness. Lyra herself felt it most acutely in quiet moments, when the stars seemed to shine just for her and the memory of one human who had believed in life beyond himself. That night, she walked to the palace halls, each corridor echoing with memories. She stopped by the window overlooking the city and whispered, as she had many times before, "Thank you, Elias Moore. I will not waste this life. I will lead, I will protect, and I will honor your sacrifice in everything I do." The city below gleamed with light, a living testament to the enduring impact of one man's courage. And as Virelia slept under the watchful gaze of his queen, the legacy of Elias Moore reached across the stars, reminding both humans and aliens that one act of selflessness could change the course of history. The bonds forged that day, between species, between past and present, between human and alien, would last for generations. And through it all, Lyra carried the quiet strength of a man who had given his life so another could live, guiding her choices and shaping her rule with unwavering devotion. Virelia had grown stronger. Its people had learned that courage was not measured by the strength of one's body, but by the willingness to risk oneself for others. And its queen had learned that a single life, lived selflessly, could illuminate the path for millions. The sun rose over Virelia, casting violet and gold light across the capital city's crystalline towers. Queen Lyra stood atop the palace balcony, her cloak fluttering lightly in the morning breeze. 50 years had passed since that fateful stormy day when a human named Elias Moore had given his life to save a small alien child. She still remembered the fear, the lightning, the weight of his arms shielding her as the world seemed to fall apart. Now, that child ruled a thriving planet. Under Lyra's guidance, Virelia had grown into a beacon of peace, technology, and justice. Its citizens lived in harmony, combining tradition with innovation, and the alien world's achievements were admired across the galaxy. But Lyra knew that none of this would have been possible without Elias's sacrifice. His courage had planted the seed that had grown into a civilization guided by empathy, courage, and responsibility. Today, the palace was filled with visitors, humans and Virelians alike. They had come to witness the opening of Elias Institute, a grand center dedicated to learning, exploration, and the preservation of shared knowledge. Lyra walked through the halls, observing the curious faces of students, scholars, and diplomats from countless worlds. The walls were lined with stories of Elias Moore, his missions, his heroism, and the moment he had given his life to protect another. This institute, Lyra explained to the gathered crowd, is more than a building. It is a promise that courage, compassion, and selflessness are not forgotten. It is a place where the values of one human life can inspire countless generations, both Virelian and human. The audience listened in awe. Humans nodded, feeling the weight of history in every word. Virelians, too, were inspired, seeing how one act of bravery could ripple across decades and light years, shaping the future in ways no one could predict it. Dr. Marcus Hale, now older and gray-haired, stood beside Lyra. He had been present 50 years earlier, witnessing Elias's final mission and preserving his story. He looked at the Institute with quiet pride. "Your Majesty," he said, he would have been proud, not just of the Institute, but of the life you've built, the civilization you've shaped. Lyra smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting both joy and remembrance. "He gave me life," she replied softly. "I only returned it to the universe by helping others, protecting my people, and honoring the values he showed me. Leadership is more than power. It is responsibility, and I carry that responsibility every day." The ceremony began, and dignitaries from Virelia and human colonies came forward to offer gifts, documents, and symbols of friendship. The room buzzed with energy, but Lyra remained focused on the deeper purpose. Elias Moore's legacy was not about recognition. It was about shaping a future where lives mattered, courage was celebrated, and selflessness was rewarded. After the ceremony, Lyra took a quiet walk through the Institute's gardens. The paths were lined with glowing plants and soft fountains, a blend of Virelian and human design. She paused at a central fountain, where a statue of Elias Moore stood, arms outstretched, shielding a small alien child. Water trickled around the base, shimmering in the morning sun. She knelt before the statue and whispered, "Thank you, Elias, for everything. I promise that your life will continue to inspire as long as I can lead, as long as Virelia can thrive." Across the galaxy, humans and Virelians were already building new partnerships. Scientists collaborated on energy projects, engineers shared knowledge about planetary defenses, and scholars exchanged cultural insights. Alliances were forming that would ensure peace and prosperity for generations. Lyra knew that none of this would have been possible without the courage of one human willing to sacrifice everything for another life. In the following weeks, Lyra visited the schools within the Institute. Young Virelians and humans sat side by side, learning from each other. Some marveled at human technology, others at Virilian philosophy. Lyra spoke to them often about courage, responsibility, and the power of choice. One life, she told them, can change the fate of millions. Every act of kindness, every choice to protect others, matters. Remember Elias Moore. Remember what is possible when you care more for others than for yourself. Even as she guided the future, Lyra remembered her own past. She walked off into the cliffs where Elias had shielded her from the storm, now a place of quiet reflection. From there, she could see the entire city below and the stars above, stretching across the cosmos. She imagined the man who had died so long ago, picturing his calm, determined face. It gave her strength, comfort, and clarity. One evening, as the twin moons rose again over the city, Lyra addressed her people from the balcony. "Virilia has grown strong," she said, "not because of power, but because of courage and compassion. Let us carry forward the legacy of those who gave everything for others. Let us teach our children, our friends, and our allies that life is precious and that selflessness can shape history." Her words echoed through the city, reaching every citizen and visitor. Humans and Virilians alike felt the weight of her message. It was not merely a speech. It was a declaration that Elias Moore's influence was alive, and it would continue to guide their world. As the night deepened, Lyra walked quietly through the palace halls. She paused at a small chamber dedicated entirely to memories of Elias. The walls were adorned with drawings, letters, and accounts from his missions. Even after 50 years, she could feel his presence in every detail. She touched the sketches of his final moments, the small diagrams of human and Virilian collaboration, and whispered, "Your life was not in vain. It echoes in every corner of this planet. Every heart you saved, every lesson you left behind." Time passed, and Lyra's rule continued. Under her guidance, Virilia became a hub of peace, innovation, and diplomacy. Humans and Virilians worked together on countless projects, space exploration, environmental restoration, and education programs that crossed species boundaries. And always at the heart of these accomplishments was the memory of one man's bravery and selflessness. Decades later, historians from both species would write about the day a human named Elias Moore sacrificed his life to save a small alien child. They would describe how that act inspired a queen, shaped a civilization, and created an interstellar alliance that changed the galaxy forever. But Lyra knew that the true story was quieter and deeper than history could ever capture. It was a story of choice, courage, and compassion. It was a story that lived in actions, in daily decisions, and in the quiet moments of reflection. In the twilight of her life, Lyra often walked along the cliffs overlooking the city. The wind carried the scent of alien flowers, and the distant hum of the city reminded her of the life she had built. She looked to the stars, where humans traveled among galaxies she had never seen, and she smiled. Elias Moore had given her life once. She had given it meaning every day since. Through her leadership, his legacy had not only survived, it had grown, reaching beyond the stars, touching countless lives, and shaping the future of two worlds. And in her heart, she whispered one final promise. "Your courage lives on, Elias. Your sacrifice was not the end, but the beginning. And as long as I breathe, as long as Virilia thrives, I will carry your light across the stars." The moons reflected off her cloak as she turned to palace. The city pulsed with life, a testament to the enduring power of one human's heroism. And above the horizon, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if honoring the man who had given everything so another could live, and the queen who had carried that gift forward. Virilia had grown, humans and aliens now working side by side. Peace, courage, and selflessness were no longer mere ideals. They were the foundation of a galaxy forever changed by one man's final, selfless act. Elias Moore had died on a stormy planet, shielding a child from danger. 50 years later, that child ruled with wisdom, compassion, and strength. She ruled because of him. And in every decision, every choice, every act of leadership, Elias lived on. His story would continue. And so would hers.